Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Industry Leaders Podcast. We are back in full swing, and I'm super excited to have you guys tuning in because today we have a beautiful and very, very special guest. Holly Baxter is joining us today. Holly, it's such a pleasure to have you on. And, for our listeners who may not be super familiar with you, can you give us a brief introduction to who you are, your journey, and growth in the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. So, I always find it a little bit challenging to kind of describe what it is I do because we do have quite a few different branches of business. But I guess we'll start with my credentials. So, my background is in food science and nutrition. And then I also have a master's degree in dietetics. So, kind of went through, I guess, the education route with an interest in I guess, health in general. And at the time when I was going to college, I was very sporty, loved, staying active. I was either out running or doing track sprinting. And I kind of found myself feeling really frustrated actually, because I was at a point where I had to either choose my career or I could either pursue my sport. And unfortunately, growing up in Australia, it was really, really hard to kind of make a career out of being an athlete. It's not quite the same as it is, here in America now. I went down the education route and kind of just found myself, I think, like a lot of, undergraduates, when you kind of finish, I had so many questions. So I definitely knew I wanted to stay in the academic space. And thankfully, my career as to where I am now, which I'll share in a minute, still enables me to do that. So I have a background in track athletics, and then I kind of gravitated more towards bodybuilding. And that was just honestly sheer fluke. I was working with a clientele at the time, and they'd actually suggested to do some competitions because, I was coaching them. And I thought, why not? And it gave me a bit more flexibility to kind of exercise and train on my own terms rather than trying to show up for a practice at a specific time. So I've had a lot of success in bodybuilding. I've won a couple of world championships in the natural divisions, and have kind of recently, I guess I'd say I retired in order to pursue my business career. So to date, I am still working as a dietitian, but we have various different products and services. So we have nutrition coaching app. I still do one-on-one coaching. We have a nutrition supplement line. We do education, books, presenting, the gamut.
You're doing everything that everyone aspires to do and are able to do so. Although it's challenging, we're not going to take that away from you. You seem to do it in our eyes very flawlessly. And I know that a lot of times when people are watching from the outside don't realize how much work and time actually goes in to make all of these things look so flawless. Did you always know that you wanted to work in the fitness industry, in like that fitness industry health space? Like before going into college, did you know that that's where you wanted to venture in and like grow in as a lifelong career that you're now pursuing?
Honestly, I wanted to be in medicine or something to do in the medical field. However, I think after spending a little bit of time in a clinical environment, it was not for me. I think my personal endeavors and motivation towards my health it's always been, really, really high. I think I'm very, intrinsically motivated to be a healthy person and, live, a high quality life. And then what I found though was working in, a hospital setting, the people that I was seeing day in, day out, and, we would see up to maybe 20 patients in a single day as a dietitian. They were just nothing like me. And I really found it hard to connect. And I found that the service that I was providing, it was like I was talking to a brick wall. And then you don't always get, the follow-up appointments and people coming back and actually following through, because they just didn't have that, that same motivation. So that was kind of why I ended up moving out into private practice. and kind of becoming an entrepreneur, because I wanted to find people that, were like me and I could connect with, and that wanted to improve their health overall.
Yeah.
So I would say originally definitely thought I would be in clinical, had no idea I would end up where I am
I feel like
now.
that's for everyone too. Like I went to school to be a nurse, and then I realized the same thing. It was not for me. Ended up, starting my business
Yeah,
middle of college and just was like, you know what, I'll get a business degree. And then I started focusing on my education with like certifications through Clean Health, NASM,
yeah.
you name it, every certification, every Arnold lifting book, like you name it. I was while I was doing full-time school. And, I think one of the keys that we see as a trend with all of the industry leaders we've been interviewing is once you pursue that passion, things, no matter how hard they get, they kind of fall into place. Like if you're not really passionate and you're finding
Mhm.
that joy with the work that you're doing, and, joy and it being difficult are two different things. Like you can still enjoy something being difficult, but it's easier to push through those difficulties when you're so passionate about it. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that you just kind of said before, it is perceived by people, I guess, kind of looking in that, it is, oh, it must be really easy. And, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of
yeah,
struggle. But I think I can say, like, honestly, without a doubt, the last 5 years of my
yeah,
entire life have probably been some of the most challenging physically and mentally that I have
yeah,
ever experienced. And that even, goes back to when you're actually trying to get your degrees. That's a really
yes,
stressful time for a lot of people, or, you're going through a certification and it can feel really challenging at the time. But, having actually gotten through all of that and had these recent experiences in business, if you have the desire to be successful, I think it probably gets a lot harder, but it's
yeah,
different struggles and different challenges. But I think we develop, emotionally and psychologically as well as we
yeah,
get older. And we just learn to adapt a little bit better to some of those stresses and
exactly.
challenges. And we end up just taking on a ton more and still feel the same. But
Continuous growth.
it's definitely
Yeah, I feel
hard.
like once we have a to-do list and we achieve it, we just are like, all right, let's add some more. It kind of takes me to the next question of like knowing that you manage so multiple businesses skill and it's a really hard one.
Mhm.
But on top of that, you're also, a wife, a stepmom. You compete and focus on your own health and wellness while juggling not one, but multiple businesses, which is absolutely inspiring and impressive. But what would you say are some skills or habits that you acquired over the years that helps you, successfully be able to juggle them? And, if an entrepreneur, someone who's new to trying to start their own business, like something that you wish you knew at the
Mhm.
beginning that you know now that is helping you manage everything, again, not as easily, but
Mhm.
like I'm saying, like helps you stay on top of everything so that everything is still staying afloat.
Yeah, that's a really great question. There's probably a few different things I can talk about actually. So, I think one of the biggest values that I found, and I'm very glad that I made it a priority when I first started, my own business, was getting a
Yes.
mentor. I only actually had a mentor. I employed a mentor for about 12 months, and it was a
Oh,
costly thing. But I really, it limited my personal spendings. It limited, other expansion of other ideas that I had. But I'm very grateful for that opportunity to work with a mentor, because it helped me kind of understand the foundations and the importance of setting
yeah,
up a solid business structure from
yeah,
the base. So that was something that was really helpful. And I think also learning to slow down. And I think I still
me too.
struggle with this like
It's
every day. I'm definitely a big visionary. I'm probably the person in, some of our businesses now that is driving a lot of the we need to do this, we need
yeah,
to do that, but you cannot do it all. And I think the biggest mistakes I have made in business are trying to do too many things at once, thinking that I can, and
yes,
you cannot. You might be able to execute things and different projects, but how well did you set it up? Can someone come in and replicate what you've done, setting up standard operating
Yeah,
procedures, and making sure that everything's documented. So I think my advice to anybody that is looking to start their own company is take it slow and like learn to be patient, because if you try to go too quickly, you're just going to, it's like, your ship is going to start to sink because there's so many holes and you do not have the
exactly.
capacity or bandwidth to kind of plug them all at once. So
I
yes.
found myself, I started my business at, just turning 19. I'm 22 now, and I find myself that I don't think this trait
Hmm.
is ever going to go away. I always feel like there's more work I could be doing, and I feel like I can take on more, or I feel
Hmm.
like I'm behind, or I see all of these successes. I'm like, well, that I need to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that one thing that you mentioned is finding a mentor, whether you're hiring someone who has done what you've done before, or even just looking up to people who have achieve similar things to what you have achieved, and taking notes like this where you take a step back and
Hmm.
mastering the basics, building the foundation. And there was this one saying,
Hmm.
Sebastian Oreb always says this: it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. That stuck with me since the day I heard
Yeah.
it. And it's like, it brings you back
Yeah.
down to being like, if you stay on route and continue to bring your best in every responsibility you have,
Hmm.
you will become that overnight success where people look at you and like, wow, like, how did you do that? Like, I feel like it happened overnight, but it didn't. They don't see the years and years that you've known that you wanted to achieve that. What are some ways
Yeah.
that, when you have everything like stacked one after another with responsibilities, what are some tips you have about,
Hmm.
like, managing your time? Because we're so limited, right? And we have to give our time for each of those responsibilities. And at the end of the day, they're all a
Yeah.
priority. It's not like one is less of a priority than
Hmm.
other. So what are your tips for that? Like, managing life and business at the same time?
Yeah, I think honestly, I definitely started off doing that terribly. Probably like many entrepreneurs, I think you do think that you can try and fit it all in. Um, I right now, my best recommendation for trying to be, managing your time well would be doing some time blocking or time recollection. So, um, probably as recently as a month ago, I went through every single day, and it was basically down to the 15-minute mark, would enter in what it was
I
I
learned
was doing. So from the time I
I
get up,
actually started doing that from
hey,
you. You posted about it a while back, and I can't recommend it enough to anybody listening. When you actually have that, and it's okay to overlap, it just helped me so much. My to-do list actually makes sense. So
yeah, I think it's important to know where you're spending time and what you're doing with that. So, yeah, for every 15 minutes, put down what it is you're doing, and, do that for a couple of weeks, and then,
yeah,
have a look at it. Where are you spending your time? I think I was wasting a lot of time just kind of, I don't know, doing mundane tasks that were not necessarily urgent
yep,
or important, and they didn't really align with my goals. They might have been like a
yeah,
convenience thing, so I really had to kind of take a step back and go, all right, what are the things here that I've got documented that are not actually, really that important? So I was able to shave down probably an hour or two off my, working week, from tasks that weren't really helping me
yeah,
to get ahead. And then prioritize, like, how important is it to me to, go out for dinner and be social on XYZ days? Can I cut it back to just maybe I do one dinner on the weekends, and then I'll fill the other time with, something that is enabling me to get ahead in business? So there's a lot of, time that we probably all spend, being social and pursuing our own
yeah,
personal goals. And, if you are really motivated about business, and, being successful, you have to make a lot of sacrifices. And one of the things that I really struggled with to begin with, and still kind of do, is learning to say no and
it's
set
so hard.
boundaries.
It is the hardest
Um,
thing. I feel like and especially like being so young, like I feel that pressure. It's like I am a yes woman, and sometimes I'm struggling sitting here, and I'm like, I overcommitted. I don't know how I'm going to do it, and I found myself drilling myself into the ground. So, what are your tips for saying no? Because I'm pulling out my notepad because I sometimes it's really hard. It's really hard.
I think you've got to practice. Actually, I had a consult yesterday with a lady, and she was kind of telling me about her lifestyle. And this woman has 4 children. She's an executive for on the board of executives for multiple companies, and she has personal body fat loss goals, and she has birthdays coming up, and she's just this woman
Yeah,
was incredible. But as I was listening to her talk to me and telling me and describing me how she feels she has no time and da 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 da, I just said, you have to learn to say no to some of these things or decide like what is your main priority here because it cannot all be the main
yeah,
priority. So I would suggest writing down all the things like I do goal setting at the beginning of every year and I have my personal goals, my business goals. And I usually break it down into quarters so it's not just everything. And then you need to make a decision about which of those is really important
correct.
to you. And, then your actions and your behaviors have to align with that goal. So if your goal was to, I don't know, make your first $100,000 in business for, this year, for example, yet every weekend, every Friday, every Saturday, every Sunday, you've got a social event and, it takes up, several hours. How serious are you actually about making that first hundred thousand
Right.
dollars you could be using that time planning, mentoring, building
Yep.
skills like listening to podcasts.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think making lists, and then making sure that your actions reflect that
Yeah, I
goal.
think that's the point right there. It's like when you have those priorities set, are your actions aligning with the goals that you're setting? And oftentimes you may
Hmm.
want something really bad, but you don't want to or choose to put in the work that's required to get you there. And as coaches and as a coach, you also can see this with, and
Hmm.
for our aspiring trainers, you will see this and or our current trainers, the frustration as a coach when you have clients who really, really want to reach the goals that they set, whether it's fat loss, weight loss, building muscle, competition, whatever. And it's the actual work that
Hmm.
needs to be put in doesn't align. So kind of gets me to that question more
Hmm.
now towards coaching is, when you have clients
Hmm.
approaching you with their own goals, what are some, ways that you manage behavioral change? Because I think that's the driving force. You can have a perfect program, perfect nutrition approach. We know the science behind that and all of that
Hmm.
that you post and preach and the education that we teach as well. It's that behavior that I
Hmm.
think is a skill that takes quite a long time and experience to build. But how do you navigate that, encouraging clients to actually make the behavioral change that's needed?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'll address it from like a
Yeah,
nutrition standpoint, and I spend a lot of time working with individuals that have struggled with maybe
yeah,
disordered eating or eating disorders, and that's a serious struggle, and I personally struggled with that for probably
me
15
too.
years. And I think one of the things, and again, I'm not a psychologist, so I'm using information that I read and practical information that I've taken away from my own personal journey from working with specialists. But, sitting down and kind of reflecting on those goals. And then, if you get into a situation, for instance, a lot of people really struggle with
Yes.
binge eating. Or they feel like they're out of control or they have this really distorted relationship with food. I'll have them kind of just pause and
Yeah.
take a moment. So like just again it's like slowing down, get out of
Yep.
that rush, sit down, and then thinking about, okay, if I choose to how am I feeling right now, why is it that I feel like I
Yeah.
want to eat? Am I eating because I'm
Yeah.
actually hungry, or am I eating because there's a social or an environmental cue that's encouraging me to eat? Or is it that I'm feeling a certain
Yeah.
emotion? Is it anger? Is it frustration? Is it,
Yeah.
anxiety? So it's just first identifying like what is the feeling that's driving that
Yeah.
person to eat, and then deciding, okay, if I choose to do this, am I going to be okay
Yes.
with the outcome? Is it a yes moment or is it a no moment? So, a lot of the behavioral change that we work through with eating disorders and poor relationship with food is about slowing down and just kind of recognizing, how it
Yeah.
is they're feeling, and then making a decision about, okay, when I finish this meal, where on maybe a hunger scale, of fullness and hunger scale, do I want to be
Yeah.
once I've finished?
Yeah.
And then, preparing a meal and just slowing down and
Yeah.
thinking. Um, so yeah, there's lots of I guess there's lots of different
Yeah.
strategies that you can use to help with behavioral change, but it requires like active like participation. You can't just
Totally.
expect these things to happen without you really having that internal desire to change. You've got to want
Yeah.
it. Um, I think practice makes it perfect.
I with my coaching is called Mindful Bodies, and we have this exact same thing, and I call it Mindful Minute. So for the girls that find themselves doing that, running through those exact list of questions, and sometimes
Mhm.
it's about
Mhm.
understanding you're coaching human beings, and it's okay to have those types of mistakes and building that trust with and a relationship with your clients so that they feel safe to talk to you about those things. And that's one thing I value
Mhm.
more than just, executing things in compliance, because when you put that level of pressure to
Mhm.
someone who maybe is struggling with that, there could be that hesitation to be open about it. And then there's a balance of it, right? Making sure that it's like, all right, you checked in this week, and it kind of is what your
Yeah.
app does too. And we'll talk about the carbon app in a minute. When you're not compliant, unfortunately, no changes are going to be made, right? So we just have to work on improving our compliance. And one of the best things you can do as a coach, and you can let me know how you handle all of these things, is when you do check-ins, it's more than just, the weight in the pictures. You have to ask your clients, feedback, not just biofeedback, but how they're feeling, what is going on, why, was there a lack of, nutrition compliance? Why was there a missing workout? And talk with them. Online platform, we have that barrier of not being in person. Have those conversations, whether it's a
Mhm.
FaceTime, Loom, phone call, voice memo. Create that trust, because with
Mhm.
relationships with food, especially in themselves, it's a very sensitive topic.
Mhm.
And working with my girls, it's like that's the one thing that's helped. It's obviously sharing my experiences because I struggled the very same, but being open to talk about it. All
Mhm.
right, we can fix it and we will improve it. I don't want 100% from you. I want improvement, and I want you to not fear food. And I think that's one thing you, Lane, and everything that your coaching is about. It's one of the striking ones in the industry that really just pushes that relationship with food, and like not having to do these outrageous things, right? That we see all
Mhm.
the dang time.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the struggles, and it's why I try to be really transparent with social media. And that is, I think there is this perception that some of these world class athletes and fitness influencers, like it must be so easy, and wow, they must do it perfect all the
Yeah,
time. So I think it's so important for anybody that is in a coaching position on social media to kind of be transparent and open and honest about what's actually required, because it shouldn't be perfection. Like nobody has a perfect diet. Nobody is perfect all the time. Everybody struggles in different ways, and I think that enables you to be relatable.
exactly.
Like yes, I
Yeah,
struggle. We all struggle, and I think just kind of letting that be known really can help help people connect with you and feel like they're comfortable
yeah.
sharing their
Yeah, if
difficulties.
you guys don't
So
follow Holly on Instagram, make sure that you do, and on YouTube, you do post such amazing, transparent like check-ins and on prep, off prep, and I think that that transparency really allows people who really want to learn about everything that goes into whether it's a comp prep or lifestyle goes, and seeing someone like you, and they're like, oh, she does this for a living. It's a piece of cake. I can never do it. And then that transparency, like you said, it really brings the reality of like, hey, you and me still make mistakes. On prep too, I've had my bad days. So kind of goes
yeah.
into my topic that I wanted to touch on, carbon. So carbon is, and I want you to give us a
Hmm.
little insight of like what inspired the creation of carbon, and what it is, and how it stands up
Hmm.
against the rest of the other apps that are out there similar to carbon.
Yeah. So Carbon Diet Coach, it is our nutrition coaching app. We wanted to be able to bring like a product to everybody. We wanted to be able to make health and fitness goals available to everybody. It's affordable. It's not something that's outrageously expensive, and that can be accessed anywhere in the world. And you know, as a one-on-one coach, you are very limited to the number of people that you can
Yeah.
reach and help. So, of course, it kind of just made sense to be able to create like an algorithm-based coaching platform that could do exactly what we do. So, we've had Carbon Diet Coach now for coming up to maybe two
Yeah.
years soon past. So, we have about 50,000 active
Oh,
subscribers, and we have an app that coaches people for fat loss, for reverse dieting, to help with building muscle, or even for people who are, they just want to maintain their weight. They're tired and frustrated with seeing it, bounce all over the place, and they're not really sure why. So it is, it's
I love
an
carbs.
awesome coach, and it also has a really great food tracking app built into it as
Yes.
well. So, yeah, it's a phenomenal, coaching
Yeah,
tool.
I personally use carbon when I'm not on my competition prep. On competition prep, as of my past 2, 3 shows, I am a little bit more rigid. I found myself after recovering with my eating disorder and like feeling confident with the food that I'm eating and comfortable, that I really do function, perform my
Mm-hmm.
best with a more rigid like meal plan. Before I couldn't do that at all. But during my off season, improvement
Mm-hmm.
season, I'm on carbon, especially because when I'm traveling,
Yeah.
if I want to maintain, if I'm reverse dieting, it's what helps me successfully come out of a competition prep. And I can't recommend it
Mm-hmm.
enough. Like if you can't afford one-on-one coaching, or if you're just struggling with like learning about nutrition, how to adjust your nutrition, that's another thing. Or are tired of getting 1,000 calories from other apps we shall not name, or like these ridiculous numbers that they automatically generate. I really do think that carbon is a really good place to be and where to start. And again, it's affordable and it's in the palm of your hand. It's super easy to use, and if you guys are wondering more about carbon,
Yes.
again, hop on their Instagram. There's a lot of videos explaining how to use it, the different tools. Can't recommend it enough. I use it myself and it is spot on. I love it. Um,
We just had a marketing meeting actually, which just ended before hopping on with you today. And we recently put out a survey, which I think close to 3,000 people actually responded to. And I was honestly blown away. I think we had 9 out of 10 people would recommend it to somebody, which is phenomenal for like an app. And then the feedback that we had was just amazing. And like you said, I think it is so easy to use. We wanted it to be simple. We wanted, the moms of the world that you've got 3 kids and they're busy, to be able to pick this up and be like, I can do this. So it is a really
And
awesome
I
tool.
like that the way what the recommendations are and the way that it flows, it's sustainable and it allows people to not have to do those crazy fads that you see online all the time. So whenever a client can't afford one-on-one coaching with me, that's my first recommendation. Like, or if clients just do training with me, I'm like, here you go. You need to focus on your nutrition, whether you afford it or not. This is an option for you that you can use. So
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I think one-on-one coaching, like, of course, I will even say as somebody that has an
yeah,
app, nothing will ever take over that one-on-one coaching experience. Like that is the top end. That's your top tier kind of service for the best
yeah.
results. But second to that, this is such a good alternative. It is like $9.99 a month,
It's
and
a cup of
it has options and caters.
coffee from Starbucks. It's
What's that?
literally like a cup of coffee from Starbucks. It's as
Yeah,
yeah.
it is, and it can cater to all different food preferences, different goals. It really has so many different options, and it gives you
Yes.
flexibility. So, depending on somebody's diet preference, they might be a vegetarian or a vegan. They might be really enjoying trying or experimenting like a ketogenic diet. Or like me, I enjoy all foods. I don't think there is a single food that I don't really like.
Me.
So you can be flexible while still getting to your health and fitness goals. So
It's
yeah, it's It's
it
great.
it is worth the rate that everybody's giving. So if you're listening to this, at least it's worth checking out. Now let's talk about outwork nutrition in the world of supplements and endless amounts of them. Same question, what inspired Outwork Nutrition? What sets Outwork, from the rest? And talk to us a little bit about like that type of like venturing into that business world as well. Because you're like the fitness
Mhm.
industry in general, the market is huge and there's lots of little niches of products, clothing, this. What inspired you guys to venture into supplementation as well?
Yeah, I think honestly, both of us, like growing up as athletes, you've probably been introduced to hundreds of different supplements
Yep.
and products. You're told, this thing's fat burning, this thing, is going to suppress your appetite, or this is going to like build and boost your metabolism. And I think we were both very frustrated with some of the information that kind of is out there and the products that are being sold. And the supplement industry, unfortunately, is largely unregulated. There isn't really a governing body that kind of will come in and say, no, you can't really do that, unlike the Food and Drug Administration, which is a lot more tightly regulated. There's lots of controls. Things have to be, done a certain way. So supplements are a little bit of a dark horse in that sense. And some of the claims that we were seeing on products and then the ingredients, it's an absolute
I
mess.
know.
And we wanted to make sure that we were able to give people products that were actually effective. So we are completely against hiding or not disclosing like our exact ingredients. A lot of the companies available that are really popular will, quote a proprietary
Yeah,
blend. And they won't actually tell you the exact ingredients that are in there. You have to list the things that are included but not in the
yeah,
quantities. And with that, it means that companies can get away with
yeah,
underdosing certain ingredients that may need an efficacious dose that is 400 or 500 milligrams more to actually be
exactly.
effective. So yeah, we wanted to kind of help the bodybuilding industry for the most part, since that's primarily where our
Is
audience started. To find supplements that actually are dosed efficaciously and that have that evidence to support their use.
yeah.
So yes, we now have a pre-workout, a recovery line, a protein, and I'm actually halfway through developing some, we'll call them macro mixes. So these will be fun flavored products that you can kind of add to, I guess, your oats. You can
Oh,
add to Greek
awesome.
yogurt to flavor things, and it will be like a spread. So that's been really fun to work
Fun.
on. So we've got some awesome flavors. Like I'm the foodie of the family, so I've got some
Oh,
really
I'm
fun
excited.
flavors
I'm
coming
super
for that
excited for
too.
that. Like you said, growing up in, from a very young age, you were put, tubs in your face of you need this, you need this, you need this. And honestly, almost a good 90% of what's out in the industry is BS, in my opinion. But of course, flashy claims sell. And, evidence-based
Mhm.
things tend to not seem so impressive. But at the end of the day, it's the simple things that really work the best. And you don't need a lot of it. And you don't need to spend excessive amounts of money for all these random things that end up not really helping you at the end of the day. And of course, like you mentioned, a lot of the stuff isn't monitored, right? And it's like you don't really know what you're consuming. You're just kind of doing it because your favorite
Yeah.
influencer consuming it. That's a big red flag there, right? And as a coach, I think it's really important to be transparent with your clients. They will ask you. I've been asked about fat burners, applicable things, topicals, like, and at the end of the day, I stick to the
Mhm.
basic three that you really need, and from there, you kind of just everything else is unnecessary, and it's just important to educate why you wouldn't necessarily recommend something.
Yeah. It's really a shame because I mean, I still see people that I probably say I don't have as much respect for them anymore, but they'll be, working with a supplement company. They've aligned themselves with that brand, and they're selling like straight up like thermogenic, like fat burners. And there's a reason that we do not have anything that claims like fat burning. There just is not enough evidence to support any of them as far as making a significant difference in, fat expenditure or energy expenditures. So, there are a handful of studies that are looking at some of these thermogenic
Yeah,
aids. And in the clinical study, the randomized control trial, it might show that, there was an increase in, 41 calories or something during the course of the workout, which it might be significant in that time frame. But then when you actually take that into consideration for someone's entire daily energy
yeah,
expenditure, it's absolutely like non-relevant. It doesn't make an impact.
yeah,
So yeah, there are a lot of garbage products out there at the
yeah,
moment, and hopefully we can continue to
exactly.
spread the
I
word.
think as coaches, it's important, like even if you have sponsorships, to be aware of what you're pushing and promoting. And it's hard. I understand for new coaches knowing everything, right? There's so much out there. And if you're not familiar with reading the studies or understanding the studies, or you've
Mhm.
grown up thinking that this works or this doesn't, it's okay to make mistakes, but it's also important to be open about
Mhm.
learning and saying, I used to promote this and I actually don't anymore. I've left companies because of that. And,
Mhm.
I am with a company now that, I stay true to just pushing evidence-based, science-based products. The simple, like I said, the simple three, you
Yeah.
have creatine monohydrate, you have protein, and then on occasion caffeine if you need it. That's my simple three. That's what I use. And of course, vitamins if you want them or
Yeah.
whatever. But those are the basics that are, there's actual evidence that I can pull out and be like, this is why I recommend it. Right. So if you can't do that, it's kind
Yeah.
of wishy-washy. Um,
Yeah, it's great to hear you say, people will promote a certain product, but then there's a lot of fear around, saying that, I made a
yeah.
mistake. And, gosh, there's probably many things that I've said in my life when I was like first out of graduate school, that I know now to be incorrect. And I think it is so important to be able to say,
Yeah.
hey, back then this is what I knew to be true, or this is where the research was at, and now it's different. This is what we're finding. And I think it's okay to
Yeah.
admit, hey, my beliefs about this have changed, or I didn't actually have enough reading or expertise to really know or understand this. I don't support this product anymore for these
Exactly.
reasons.
Or
So that takes a lot of you have to take away your ego in those moments, and I think, and just be cool with, you're not always going to get everything
yeah,
right.
when it comes to training, nutrition approaches, like over the years, especially once I started furthering my education, connecting with mentors and like learning from some of the like in my opinion, well trusted and well backed people in the industry, I changed my opinion and views on a lot of things. And, I've come out and said,
Mhm.
hey, there's that video of me doing this crazy exercise because I thought that that's what I was supposed to do. Here's a correct variation that I learn now. And it's okay to grow and
Yeah.
learn. Another thing that's like, if you think you know everything, you know nothing at all. Science is evolving. There's so much
Hmm.
education out there. Like you said, put the ego aside. Us as coaches, we make mistakes too. So be open to continuing your education and learning and being okay to be wrong. If you're wrong, you're like, all right, that's how you learn, right? That's how we learn from our mistakes and like things that we don't know. Um, let's talk a little bit about coaching and like the art of coaching. And when it comes to like you starting, your own private coaching business, what were some of the things that like
Hmm.
you wish you knew right at the beginning that you know now that could have helped make, the actual coaching process easier, or some mistakes, not mistakes, or just things that you ran into that really brought to up level your art of coaching and the success of your coaching that you provide now?
Goodness. Okay. I think when I first started, and I think there's probably a lot of people like this, you approach your clientele with a little bit of your own
Yes.
bias and your own preferences. And whilst some of my bias was, it's backed by science, which is fine. I think when I first started, I was a little inflexible. And I'll give an example. Maybe, somebody really didn't enjoy like high
Yes.
intensity cardio, or they'd said to me, Holly, I really don't like this type of food, or it might have been like high fat, or anything like that. And I think when I first started, I definitely would push a little bit more of my
Yeah.
personal opinion and direction based on my own interests and
Yeah.
beliefs. Now, I think I have a much more broad approach. I
Yes.
really listen. I have learned to be a phenomenal listener. And there's also not a perfect strategy. There is never one route to getting to the
Yeah.
end goal. So one of the things that I found myself saying a lot more with clients today is, here is a bit of an overview. This is a guideline, but we don't have to do this in this set in stone way. We can deviate from
Yeah.
this plan. You're going to have life pop up. We can change things here and there to be flexible, and we don't have to do it exactly by the book like this. So I think listening and trying to be accommodative to somebody's individual
Yeah.
and unique
Yeah, I think
lifestyle.
that is one of the first mistakes I made. Is once I got my certifications and, some course educations and stuff like that, I was like, all right, the book says this, you have to do it this way, or sorry, I guess you just don't want it bad enough. And then I was like, okay, wait a second. Wait a second. I myself don't do it like this. And you have to understand that and
Mhm.
level of education and knowledge from your clients, right? You can't, like, let's say like a
Mhm.
bodybuilder competitive athlete versus a mom that's never tracked before, has 3 kids, a business, and is super, super busy. You can't expect this mom to go from
Mhm.
not ever tracking to tracking every single macro to a T, evenly distributing their protein, this, all of
Mhm.
the minors, if they haven't mastered the
Mhm.
majors, right? And I think it's
Mhm.
the quote, "Keep it simple, stupid." Like, keep it simple,
Mhm.
let them master the basics and use all of the tools, all of the skills, everything you have at the appropriate times. That's the art of coaching, in my opinion. Having the library of knowledge and knowing when to pick which book to
Mhm.
provide your clients, right? That's your job as a coach, to know as much as you can, so when someone provides you with a
Mhm.
problem, you're like, "Hold on, here's what you could do. Oh, that doesn't work. Oh, we have another one, right? We have another option." So I think, like,
Yeah.
don't be so stubborn with, your methods. There's so much flexibility and not one way works. I think that's the most fascinating thing for me. Like, you could go about it at so many different ways and everyone can reach success in their own way.
Yeah. I think something else that I do a little differently now is actually, set some stronger boundaries with clients too. So, what I mean by that, I guess, is we will be faced with some really challenging clients at
Mhm.
times, people that are very stuck in their ways, and perhaps are having a hard time, with some of those behavior changes. And I think when I first started, someone might come to me and say, weight loss was their goal. And I've found myself turning away a lot more clients, or even maybe working through, several weeks of programs with an individual, and then, having the confidence to say, I'm going to stand by my grounds here, and I am not going to support, this particular
Yeah.
goal because it does not align with my values.
Yeah.
And that's fine. You can find somebody else that might do that, but I'm letting you know, like,
Yeah.
this is a hard no for me.
Yeah.
So, I think when I first started, I used to be a little bit, I don't want to say I was a wuss, but you can definitely, feel obligated sometimes to agree with people to kind of keep the peace.
Yeah.
And I know that, over the years, as I've, built my own confidence, and learnings, that it's a lot easier now for me to kind of put my foot down and say, this is actually, this is why these things are happening. So if we want to keep going down this road,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. Balance of
So,
having empathy and, like, understanding where your clients are coming from, and then the opposite of, like, being
mhm,
real with them. I That's one of the things that completely
mhm,
180'd my coaching, is explaining why things are happening. Well, you're frustrated, you're not seeing
mhm,
results. It's because XYZ, right? We need
mhm,
to work on fixing that, and then you'll see the results. Or, hey, maybe that goal, like you said, and I'm still kind of a wuss with these things. I always am, like, softening it, but there's some clients that I'm like, what do we can't do that. We can't go in a deficit when your calories are this, or you're not compliant like this, all of those things. It's explain why. But you don't have to be a jerk about it, but just explain why, right? And then if they're
Yeah.
unhappy and they think you suck because you're not trying to help
Mm,
them, or they didn't lose all the weight that they gained over 10 years in 6 weeks, that's fine. Like, you stay true to your values and your morals, and that's good. Not everyone's gonna like you. Not everyone is gonna
mm.
click with you, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You got to be okay with that. You can't please everybody. Um,
Yes, and I think, playing to like if your goal is to become a successful business person and have a coaching business, just recognize that you're not going to be able to please everybody, and your personality is not going to align with everybody. I know, like, just me and my husband, like Lane, we could not be more different. Like, I am OCD, like, I love details. Like, I'll do a 25-minute video on a topic if I can,
yeah,
and he's like, no. 2 seconds, whoa, way too much. Like, that's way, overkill. So, I think it's really important to recognize, like, okay, who are you as an individual, and use that. Like, you don't want to change who you are
yeah,
to acquire clients.
exactly.
It's like, just be your true authentic self,
Yep,
and the people that like that are gonna come to you. And I think
exactly.
just being consistent.
Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
and we're kind of wrapping up this podcast now, and I wanted to ask, what would you say are your, like, some of your goals that you have set for yourself for your near future, whether they're personal goals, life goals? What would you say is like a goal that you're working towards right now at the moment?
I think expanding carbon to even more and more countries. Obviously, we want to be able to help as many people as possible. I think, if we could get to, 500,000 subscribers in my lifetime, like, that would be absolutely incredible. I would love to do that. So, we're working really hard to make some changes, to continue to advance that and make it as lifelike, as possible.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a big goal of mine. We're also, well, one of my goals is an AI workout program. So we obviously already have our workout builder, which is, I guess, a web-based platform with programming. But my next big project after we launch our new site is to get that into app form, and AI intelligence, that really building out something that you would do as a coach, like those tiny little one-on-one adjustments.
Yeah.
Let's get that into an algorithm so that we can have a really amazing training app.
Awesome.
And beyond that, personally, I think I would love to be able to get on stage again at some point. But again, it's just trying to trying to prioritize, what's the most important thing right now.
Yeah.
So if I can get back to stage, and I would love to go back and try to get to the Olympia or the Arnold's for the IFBB, that would be a massive transition because I have not competed for that federation for a few years
Yeah.
now. So I would love to do that, but it's just, timing is really important. And I say this to people that have fat loss goals, like, you have to be smart about when you pick, fat loss, because it's hard, even
It
for the
is.
pros. So, you know, you've got to be realistic, and I'm being real. I tried to diet for the last 6 weeks, and I'm still the same weight as I was 6 weeks ago, because
Yeah.
that doesn't make sense. I
Yeah.
had way too much going on, and I couldn't prioritize anything. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think competing would be great, and then obviously starting, or having a child of my own. We obviously have a family, but I would love to have a little tot. So
That's
we'll see.
I I love watching your journey. I know many of our listeners follow you and aspire, and that you are inspired by you and everything you do. And having you in our podcast is such a big honor. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to Holly and I's conversation. Again, make sure you're following Holly on Instagram. We will. This is going to go live on YouTube and everywhere that you could stream podcasts. Holly, thank you so much for joining us today. It was such a pleasure, and I can't wait to see all of your goals come to fruition and the growth with everything that you set your mind to. You've been an inspiration to me since the beginning of the industry, when I came into the industry, and like, as a coach, and making sure that I want to add to the percentage of coaches that are not spewing out BS. So obviously, you and Lane have been, especially when it comes to nutrition, my go-to if I ever don't know anything. I Google whatever the topic is, Holly Baxter or Lane Norton. What do you guys have to say about it? Let me kind of follow through with that and figure it out. So I know I'm not the only one that's doing that, so I can't thank you guys enough for doing what